Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. I thought I would continue another series here based on some of your current and past suggestions. I had such a great time with my last 5 videos that I thought I would continue that stuff here. So I'm probably going to do about another 4 or 5 videos, again mixing in current and past suggestions. So please be on the lookout for some of the other ones coming soon. And then based on your responses, based on the views, based on the positive comments, it seems like y'all are having a blast too. So anytime I experience something like this, I definitely continue it. Now with regards to this video, this one is pretty fascinating because it has to do with what might be, at least based on what I was thinking about some of the past videos that I've done on the aliens and UFOs, but this might have the most prominent person yet experiencing a UFO or an alien encounter. So what I mean is this: a lot of my past videos, they dealt with your average Joe, like your average working class person, maybe sometimes in rural America or in other rural parts of the world, just people on average experiencing these things. This though has to do with a person that is by far very prominent. I mean, he was pretty up there when it came to the world of U.S. government, and it has to do with a guy by the name of Cordell Hull, and the case is known as the Cordell Hull Case. So you're looking at a picture of the gentleman here. First, I'm going to talk about him to give you a brief history about his prominence. Then I'm going to talk about the encounter itself. So lots of great info, and again, keep that in mind, especially after you hear how high ranking he is. When it comes to this, it would give you pause and realize, why would he be making something up? The only caveat is, of course, that this information is almost like from a friend of a friend of a friend. So it's not really direct information, but it's still, if one were to believe it, then yes, it is still pretty high up there. So who was this guy? Who was Cordell Hull? Well, he was a pretty high up there, pretty prominent politician back in the 1930s, 1940s. A brief history on him: he was a U.S. Senator from the 1931-1937 time period, and then under Franklin D. Roosevelt, that's right, the actual president, FDR, he was Secretary of State. So to give you an idea of what that position is, like Hillary Clinton is Secretary of State. So again, that's pretty high up there. He was even offered, after his service with Franklin D. Roosevelt, he was offered the vice presidency in 1945. Don't think he took it. I'm not quite sure. I have to check that history again. But he did win in 1945 the Nobel Peace Prize. So I can't think of any other video that I was talking about a Nobel Peace Prize winner winning, let's say, a winner such as this, having such an encounter with aliens and UFOs. So again, definitely gives you pause when it comes to the prominence. Now, as far as the encounter, here's what occurred. So, in 1999, there was a letter that was sent to the Center of UFO Studies, and it was sent by a woman who was the daughter of a guy named Turner Hamilton Holt. So, the way it was described was, this guy, Turner Hamilton Holt, had a cousin, and lo and behold, that cousin was the guy we were just talking about, Cordell Hull. So again, almost like friend of a friend of a friend, but in this case, all family members. So, the way that the daughter described it, Mr. Holt met with Mr. Hull because Mr. Hull took him to a very secretive place. In this case, it was the U.S. Capitol building. Now, the top stories are obviously all open to public, open to tourists. I've been there myself. It's a beautiful building. I took a bunch of pictures on the outside, and then on the inside, I was able to visit the locations known for the tourists. But there's actually a very large basement, basically almost encompassing the entire Capitol itself. And if this story is to believe, there's an actual sub-basement, so a basement for the basement. And so the way the daughter described it in the letter it must have been that Mr. Holt was very, very good company with Mr. Hull, again, that Secretary of State. And because Mr. Hull took Mr. Holt to one of those sub-basements, but only after swearing and then probably promising who knows how many times not to share this information with anybody else. But it was the idea that he was about to show him something so secret that this information, once he shared it to him, could not be shared with anyone else until after they were both deceased. So long after their deaths of old age, then that's when the information could be shared. So what could be so secret? Well, the way that Mr. Holt described it was he was shown the sub-basement, some room within there, and in it he saw this. He saw 4 large glass jars, each of them holding 4 creatures. That's how the description was. That's how Mr. Holt purposely described them. He described them as some kind of creatures of some sort. He did not call them aliens. He did not call them extraterrestrials. All he did was just basically refer to them as some kind of creatures. Well, there they were within the actual jars. So it seemed like it was some kind of formaldehyde, maybe, that was keeping them in some kind of suspended animation, or at least keeping them from decaying at the very least. And then next to them was a small aircraft of some kind, a round craft. This was something that was clearly very damaged because it looked to have been very wrecked. But there it was beside them. So again, aliens and then UFOs right then and there within the sub-basement of the U.S. Capitol. And the way the daughter described it in a letter, this must have been somewhere around 1939, because her father, Mr. Holt, said it was in the late 1930s. The only other description that the father provided to the daughter in the letter was that the creatures were somewhere around 4 feet tall in total height, and that the thing, I guess whatever that machine or whatever that ship, whatever it was that was next to them, was some kind of silver metallic like substance, and it was in quote unquote in pieces, not because really of the wreckage, but because it looked like it was taken apart. And the closest description as to its color was again silver. That's the closest thing that they decided, as lack of a better word. But yes, that was everything that Mr. Holt saw within that small room, whatever that was within the sub-basement. And the way that he described Mr. Hull, stating that the government was keeping these things there because they wanted to keep them private. They wanted to be able to keep, I guess, this sensational information from reaching the public, because their idea was if something like this ever did reach the public, it could cause some kind of mass pandemonium. The idea that, again, we are not alone, and most in the public may not be able to, I guess, compensate or relate to that in a positive manner. So that's where they were. But as far as the daughter stating if they're there now, she, in the letter, it seems like she strongly suggested that it had been moved because they were trying to confirm it with some of the curators there within the U.S. Capitol building, but the curator stated that no, they've never heard of something like this occurring. Who knows, of course, if that was just withholding information or not, but that they did say that yes, the Capitol building is always under construction, so there would have been a sub-basement for the basement, because that's generally where they had larger storage rooms there. But that's it. That's all they most would have confirmed. The interesting thing, though, is that this guy, if it's true believed, again, Mr. Cordell Hull, the former Secretary of State, if it's true believed that he did have this and saw this within the Capitol, and this was during his tenure, again, as Secretary of State, with working with the President, all this sensational information, when he retired, when he left government, he actually wrote his memoirs, not in just one book, but it was a 2-volume book set. So he could have had all the time in the world, all the space in the world to talk about this in length. But interestingly enough, he never mentioned any of this within his memoirs. Also, none of his paperwork within the Library of Congress, which is there available today to see if you wanted to, nothing like this as far as the story that he told Mr. Holt appears there either. So all we have for this quote-unquote proof is the family member telling another family member, and that family member writing in a letter to their family member, in this case a daughter, only to be seen and I guess read years after their death. So again, a little caveat, little grain of salt when it comes to this information, but it still is pretty interesting, pretty sensational when you consider the prominence of the people involved. So that's it. That's all the information I have as far as the Cordell Hull case. If anyone has anything else they wanted to share, other maybe info from the family members, somebody that was, I guess, also privy to this information outside of the daughter, maybe they had more stuff to share, please post those comments below. That'd be really, really great to hear. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.